Good morning, everyone. Maxime Bernier's first public appearance since the election will be November 15th, 16th in Red Deer at the 7th Essentials of Freedom Conference, meeting the challenges of Western separation. He'll be giving the keynote lunch address on the Sunday, and the address is called Fixing Canada, the Political Challenge. Keynote lunch address. Maxime Bernier, the People's Party of Canada. So if you're interested or wondering what's next for Mr. Bernier as the leader of the People's Party, this, going to speak to people who are interested in politics and interested in hearing what he's got to say. So I'm excited to see it. Apparently they'll be streaming it, or it will be put up on YouTube after the conference is done. There's some other speakers I'm excited to see in here as well. Bill Tufts is talking, and we went out for a lunch the other day, which was pretty cool. And there's some other people. Stockwell Day I thought was an interesting person as well. I'd be interested to hear him, and Mr. Lawton, after being targeted by the Trudeau administration along with Rebel News and True North, Miss Malcolm's outfit. That's all interesting stuff, right? This is an interesting conference. If I was closer, I would go to this. Patrick Moore as well. So, but I'm not closer. So, oh well. Maybe next time. maybe there'll be something in Toronto. One could hope, except that I avoid Toronto if I can. Anyway, moving on. National Post is reporting SNC Lavalin witness was offered $10 million to change testimony trial hears. And I just want to give you an overview of what's been happening with this trial. So we'll go back to October 31st, and then we'll get to the $10 million offer for a change of testimony. It's quite interesting. Here we go. Global News is reporting on October 31st. International fraud and corruption. Trial for former SNC Lavalin executive begins. Paying bribes to obtain lucrative Libyan construction contracts was once the business model for a division of SNC Lavalin, prosecutors said Thursday, as the fraud and corruption trial of a former employee of the engineering giant got underway. Sami Bebawi, 73, faces 8 charges, including fraud, corruption, laundering, proceeds of crime, possession of stolen goods, and bribery of foreign officials. The case involves contacts tied to the Libyan dictatorship of Muammar Gaddafi. Bebawi was charged in 2014 and has pled not guilty. I scroll down a bit. Prosecutor Anne Manikowen, excuse me if I've got that wrong, told jurors the trial is, quote, a case of international fraud and corruption. She said the accused worked to obtain lucrative contracts in Libya by paying bribes. In fact, said Manikowen, but that plan became the business model, she said. Bebawi received millions of dollars in the deals, which began in the late 1990s. I scroll down again. Ben Issa, hold on a second. I know how to say this. Ben Issa said he was tasked by Bebawi to recover the money. He told jurors his mandate was to get the money by any means. Ben Issa said a contact put him in touch with Saeed Gaddafi, I think that's how you say that, the former dictator's son, in Tripoli. The men developed an affinity for each other and even shared a meal together in Rome. After SNC Lavalin's client learned of Ben Issa's relationship with Saeed Gaddafi, the company changed its tone. Ben Issa said payments began arriving in SNC Lavalin's bank accounts. In total, prosecutors allege Ben Issa collected 6 million Deutschmarks, DM, the official currency of the German state at that time, and Bebawi got the same. They also allege Saeed Gaddafi received 7 million Deutschmarks. Ben Issa, said the financial relationship continued with the signing of other contracts. The witness is expected to elaborate with his testimony when his testimony continues Friday. Trial is expected to last 6 weeks. And here's the $10 million to change money. Witness was offered $10 million to change testimony, Trial of former SNC Lavalin executive hears. A key witness in Sam Bebawi's fraud and corruption trial said he was once offered $10 million in exchange for more favorable testimony that could protect the former SNC Lavalin vice president. Former executive Raed Ben Issa told jurors Tuesday that he received the offer from Bebawi's counsel while detained in Switzerland. He had been arrested in 2012 for his own role in the company's Libyan dealings. Ben Issa said he was offered the money to make his eventual testimony match a version of events Bebawi had previously given Swiss authorities. I refused it, Ben Issa said, of the offer, and I informed Canadian authorities about it. In her opening statement, Crown Prosecutor Anne-Marie Manikowen said the trial will eventually hear recordings of conversations about the offer. The jury, she added, will then realize just how far Mr. Bebawi was willing to go to avoid legal consequences. Now, the only quote attributed to her is just how far Bebawi was willing to go And I guess they're doing this for brevity, but I hate when they do this. I'd rather read the whole thing of what they said rather than the short version of the news. Back to the article. Bebawi, 73, faces charges of fraud, bribing a foreign public official, and possessing a property obtained by crime, including two amounts of roughly 15 million and 12 million. His trial has also so far focused on SNC Lavalin's attempts to create a relationship with former dictator Muammar Gaddafi's son, Saeed Gaddafi, in order to recuperate money it was losing through a state-led project in Libya. The Crown alleges the firm's relationship with Gaddafi led to developing a new business model in the North African country, a scheme that involved paying millions in kickbacks and bribes, including to Gaddafi, to ensure it kept receiving lucrative contracts. The gifts culminated with the firm agreeing to buy Gaddafi a $25 million yacht. Man, wouldn't you like to do business with these guys? Listen, I'd love a $25 million yacht. Wouldn't you love a $25 million? Wouldn't you love me to have a $25 million yacht? Yes? Oh, wonderful. Let's make that happen. I mean, back to the article. Throughout his testimony, I just want to note that every single time they talk about Issa, they say Ben Issa. I think that's really weird. Why not just call him by his last name? Anyway, back to this. Throughout his testimony, Ben Issa has emphasized that Bebawi, see, they call Bebawi just Bebawi, but like it's Ben Issa every time. Okay, anyway, back to this. Pressured him to do whatever it took to pay whatever was necessary to ensure the firm recuperated the money it was losing on the project. That pressure, he testified, led him to develop the firm's relationship with Gaddafi. After spending 30 months in detention, Ben Issa pled guilty in Switzerland to charges of corrupting a foreign official and laundering money. He also signed an agreement to cooperate with Canadian authorities while detained. He left the company in early 2012, asked Tuesday if he was in contact with Bebawi between the time of his departure and his arrest. Ben Issa recalled one phone call in particular. He was all panicked and he was threatening to commit suicide, Ben Issa said. Bebawi, he added, was worried about two companies that had been created to allow SNC Lavalin to pay bribes to partners in Libya and bonuses to executives without the firm being linked back to the transactions. That's how they do it. It's not the firm that you get a bonus. It's you've created this side deal and they've paid you that way. And it's exactly the same as the amount you donated to the Liberal campaign or whatever, whichever campaign you're told to donate to. Back to the article. He told me I absolutely needed to handle the situation so we wouldn't be impacted by what was happening, Ben Issa said. I was really surprised. What I figured out later, since I was arrested, was that he had information I didn't. Yeah, after he was arrested, right? He was worried because, he was concerned he was going to get arrested. Back to the article. Ben Issa was later extradited to Canada to face charges in the McGill University Health Centre's SuperHospital Fraud scandal. He told jurors that case ended with him pleading guilty to one charge of using forged documents. The trial continues Wednesday with the defense cross-examining Ben Issa. Every time, Ben Issa. And I'm not going to read through this one. This is the Montreal Gazette. This is the SuperHospital part. This is just background information if you're interested in that. And this is the final story for this morning. And short video, just right on time. This is the Canadian government arguing in court that the United States is a safe country. So I want to make that point because, that's an interesting point. So here it is. Also, there are groups that are suing the Canadian government to get them to have to step down or stop enforcing the Safe Third Country Agreement because they're saying it's against the Charter. Yeah. But they've already tried this. Here we go. Woman who says she was raped by MS-13 gang members challenges constitutionality of Canada-US border deal. On Monday, the federal court in Toronto will begin hearing week-long arguments in a constitutional challenge to the Safe Third Country Agreement, STCA, between Canada and the United States. Those challenging the deal include the Canadian Council for Refugees, the Canadian Council of Churches, Amnesty International, and several would-be refugees, including a woman who says she was raped by an MS-13 gang member in El Salvador. The group says the border agreement, which requires claimants make a refugee claim in the first safe country they arrive in, is unconstitutional because it discriminates against women who allege sexual assault or domestic abuse, and because it deprives asylum seekers of their fundamental rights to life, liberty, and security of the person. Now, quickly, this is me interjecting here. Do you have to give an example of how it infringes or discriminates against these people, or how it depraves asylum seekers of their fundamental right to life or liberty or security of the person? it's all fine and good to make these allegations and maybe even having an argument, but like just saying it doesn't make it true, right? Just saying, well, it discriminates against women. In what way? The law doesn't discriminate against women. The law is applied equally to women, men, and children. And so I don't understand in what way, and often they'll say women and children in this, or women and young girls, right? And what about young boys? Are they not as vulnerable as young girls? But it's just interesting to me that making these claims, and people will just read over it and accept it, but it drives me crazy because there's no basis for these claims. There's no basis, none. Okay, back to the article. Quote, the evidence now before the court establishes that the refugee claimants Canada turns away at our borders are exposed to grave risks of detention and mistreatment in the U.S., wrote lawyers for the group challenging the deal. The Safe Third Country Agreement was established in 2004 and allows Canada to turn away asylum seekers at official border crossings if they do not meet certain exemptions. This deal was not widely talked about until the spring of 2017, when the number of people seeking asylum in Canada each year doubled from 23,350 in 2016 to more than 47,000 in 2017. And the numbers before 2015 were much, much lower in the single, 1,800 people, 2,400 people. Like, this is an insane explosion from the pre-2015 numbers. Back to the article. The spike and the fact that tens of thousands of people have begun exploiting a so-called loophole in the agreement by entering Canada at unofficial points of entry caused many people to argue that the government should do more to control the borders. Yes, I'm one of them. Back to the article. Others, such as Janet Dench, director of the Canadian Council for Refugees, believes anti-immigration policies enacted by the Trump administration have made America an unsafe country for asylum seekers. Dench argues that if Canada does not scrap the Safe Third Country Agreement, it will be falling short of its international obligations by sending asylum seekers back to the U.S., where she says people do not always receive a fair hearing and where they could be returned to their home countries despite the risk of persecution, even death. If the court accepts these arguments, the government could be forced to either suspend or withdraw from the Safe Third Country Agreement. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Not the first challenge. This isn't the first time the Safe Third Country Agreement has been challenged constitutionally. In 2007, the same group of applicants was successful in getting the deal deemed unconstitutional by the federal court when Justice Michael Phelan ruled that Canada was exposing would-be refugees to the risk of harm and possible torture by sending them back to the U.S., where they could be deported. But this decision was overturned a year later, due in part to issues of jurisdiction and because the Federal Court of Appeal ruled that the arguments made at the time were largely hypothetical, meaning it wasn't clear that asylum seekers were actually being exposed to risk when turned away by Canada. However, Dench says the circumstances in America have changed significantly since this decision was overturned. She points to the Trump administration's policy of indefinitely detaining asylum seekers while their claims are heard, and to the act of separating children from their parents as obvious examples of why the U.S. is no longer safe for would-be refugees. Saying that indefinitely and until their trials are heard, or while their claims are heard, those two things are different, because while their claims are heard has a finite end. Their claim will be heard and they will have a result and they will be able to move on with their lives, either as refugees in the United States or back in their home country. But it's not indefinite. Certainly not indefinite. Like, come on, Miss Dench. Like, get real. And I'm scrolling down quite a lot. Challenge must be dismissed. Lawyers for the government say arguments made by Dench and those challenging the Safe Third Country Agreement have no merit and that the case should be dismissed. The government argues that the Safe Third Country Agreement does not discriminate against women and that the U.S. is a safe country for would-be refugees, adding that this is demonstrated by the fact that thousands of asylum cases are approved in America each year. Yes, it is a country that people flee to. People are quite happy to be in the United States. You can't unilaterally argue that in spite of the thousands of people who are successfully claiming refugee status in the United States, it is not safe for refugees. You can't do that. That argument doesn't hold water. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Welcome to Clown World, Canada. It's unbelievable what's happening. This is lawcraft. This takes up time and money and energy. But at the very least, the government lawyers are arguing that the United States is a safe country. Some sanity is prevailing, but not nearly enough. This is ridiculous. What a waste. What a waste. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day, and check out CanadaPoly.com.